Oh, something I didn't tell you before.
Yeah.
You can't swear on the radio.
Yeah, I will not.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's fine if you do, but then I have to go. Every
You have to
time
go
I'm like,
edit it.
don't swear on the radio, and
Yeah.
then I swear, and then I have to go back in and
edit,
do like
yes.
really dumb edits.
Yeah.
One time
I'll try my best.
Okay, I interviewed. We should be good. I interviewed a like a femme punk band. Do you know Burly Girlies
I
at
do.
all? Okay,
Yeah.
I interviewed Burly Girlies. Shout out to Burly Girlies because they rock so
absolutely.
much. They're so cool.
Yeah.
But the only song that they had out at the time was their song, which is called "A Bad Word That You Can't Say on the Radio."
Okay.
And then for horror, that's like the name of their tune. And I really wanted to, I was like, I have to play some of their music, and this song rocks. And so I asked them for
a radio edit.
I radio edited.
Oh, you did it yourself?
Yeah.
Huh.
It didn't go well. It was like absolutely.
How did you
ridiculous.
do it?
Oh, GarageBand.
But like every time they swore.
Yeah, you know what I did?
Do?
I just reverse played
reversed
back.
that part.
Yeah.
Man, I love.
It was so bad. No, it was not. It was not good. I was like, I almost shouldn't play this because it's not. At what point am I like?
Did you play it?
Yeah.
With the reverse and
Yeah.
everything? Oh wow. Okay.
It was not great, but I had to play something.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's cool.
Hi, Will.
Hello.
Thanks for being on. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Do you wanna introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Will Andrews. I am a musician as well as a handful of other things. And when I release music or play solo, I go by Willverine, which is my kind of solo stage persona, I guess. I'm a trumpet player. I record synth and lots of other weird instruments, and I perform with a whole bunch of other musicians in the Burlington area.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a pretty busy guy. I play every Wednesday at the Wallflower Collective.
7 to 9.
It's 7 to 9.
Don't miss it.
I've been doing that for over 2 years, which has been fun. That's a really awesome gig.
Yeah.
A chance for me to be super creative and instead of just doing it in my studio, I get to do it in front of people, which makes it a little bit more higher stakes, which is actually pretty fun for me. I like the performative aspect of it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Awesome.
That's a little bit about me.
I play your music on the show.
Oh, cool.
All the time.
Oh, that's great.
Really and truly all the time.
What do you like? Which ones?
Okay, well, my two favorite tunes that you do. So, actually, we should back up even farther.
Let's back up.
Because you and I got connected.
Yes.
I don't even want to say that we collaborated on a song because we never met, but
until last week.
Until last week when I came to Willverine Wednesday at Wallflower Collective 7 to 9 Wednesday. But yeah, you put down some music on a track of mine, and so going back even farther, we share a mutual friend, Chris, who is like my musical collaborator. Every song I've written, pretty much, Chris has helped me with in some way. And he and I like geek out over the Burlington music scene and have since like 2018.
Okay.
And like you have been on my radar for like the longest time. And I can't remember the timing, but I think that we already knew who you were before Chris worked with you in your day job.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I can't really remember how it went.
Yeah.
All I know is I was like, no, you're not working with that person like that, like in a completely not music sense. Like that's insane. So I love your remix of Candy.
Oh yeah. That was fun.
And I love Hope It All.
Yeah. Great.
Candy was my most listened to song on Spotify last year.
No
that you're there.
Yeah.
There we go. Goodbye, everyone. I'm kidding. Yeah, it was my most listened to song on Spotify last year. Your version of it.
That's great.
So that's like very important. Well, I guess I haven't shared that until now, but like I am an absolute like stan, like a Willverine.
Oh, that's
stan.
awesome. Well, that's really great.
Yeah. Anyway, so I play you on the show all the time. Cool. And so you and I got connected because we share a friend, and I don't even know how that happened. But anyway, you got to put some.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think back. I think it was like Chris connected. You guys were going to record. There was a weekend or some sort of session that was happening a couple years ago. And I was like, hey, I'm always down.
Yeah.
I always love to collaborate with people in that sort of setting, especially when someone like sends me a track and they're like, just do whatever you want.
Yeah. And
then I can kind of be super creative and throw a whole bunch of different things at it. And then you can pick and choose whatever you'd like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how I think it happened.
Yes. Yes. That is also how I remember it happening. And I just remember like the difference between, and this is for Cheers to Feeling Stuck, which is the song. I probably should say the name of the song. That would be helpful. But I just remembered this like distinct, like we had worked. I mean, at that point, it had been 2 years that Chris and I had been working on that too, and like it was crazy. Like I had worked so much on it, and it was like before Willverine, after Willverine, like it just made the biggest difference. And I just remember, and I think that yours was the last like piece that we added before we got it mixed and mastered, and it just like the elevation was like insane. So
I think that when I was recording the different parts for you, I was envisioning what it would be like to hear it for the first time.
Yeah.
That's kind of how when I'm going, I'll throw a bunch of ideas out there and then I'll mix it down and I'll sit around and I'll listen to it and I'll try to keep the artist in mind, like what's going to catch their ear, like what are they going to like, what's going to surprise them, what's going to be their favorite part. I was thinking about like you and Chris like listening to it together and be like, oh, this part, this is my favorite part. What about this? And like, and just that sort of like, because I know what it's like when someone does something for me and like adds some incredible musical choice or whatever, something that I wouldn't have ever done or thought of. And I just always try to keep that in mind when I'm working with people in that way.
Yeah.
There was a couple things. There was this, I used like this weird cassette tape, this modified cassette tape that had this weird like pitch bend reverse thing. There were a couple things like that I thought were really kind of cool. The weird trumpet parts that were mixed in and out. I thought those were pretty great, just like the little piano. Yeah, so there were a bunch of cool ideas that I threw out there that I was really happy that you guys enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was so awesome. Not to like, I don't want that to take up any more of the time, great. But that's sort of like how we, circulated to here. And and you actually have technically been on the show before because you sent me a voice memo to include in this like sort of special episode I did where I sort of like I deconstructed the song on the show, which was like really fun to do. But I'm really glad that we met last week in person, and then I'm really glad that I actually can have you in to hear like way more about your process, and that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today. That, and you have new music, which is super exciting. So I guess I'll start. Like you have this like very interesting niche, and like you said, like when you play live, it really comes out and is really cool, and your recorded music is awesome. And I think you're in this like really particular lane that I find to be just like sick. Like I think it's really cool. But I'm wondering, like, you play the trumpet. Like, how did you get into the sort of like synth sound, and now you sort of bridge those two things together? I can imagine in my head that, I don't know, you started playing trumpet first, but maybe I'm wrong. Like, how did you come to get the like musical skills that you have now to do what you do? Yeah,
so I think like when I think about the connection of how I started like falling in love with music and then this sort of weird sound that I have now, it all comes down to practicing the trumpet, because I grew up hating practicing. And as a trumpet player or any sort of instrumental musician, you play a lot. You're taught to practice scales along to a metronome. And I got a drum machine early on from my band director, and instead of using a metronome to practice, I learned how to program a drum beat, which is a metronome and a drum machine. And I learned some basic synthesis and some basic like step programming and all that sort of stuff. And that's how I kind of got into like being able to like bridge this gap between like actual live instrumental music and then this programmed sort of stuff, which is, I think, the basis of the music that I write. Is like this bridge between the two. So that's kind of how I started it. And then I remember like I had 2 tape decks as a kid, and I'd record onto one and play it and record on the other and go back and forth, like multi-tracking, just
so cool.
writing terrible songs about, I don't know, whatever. I did find some of those tapes, and I haven't played them for myself yet, but I've been saving that.
Oh, you gotta.
But yeah, that's kind of how I started. It was like practice. And it was like, I wanted to make practice a little bit more fun. Mm-hmm. And then I started really getting into like the drum machine sounds and listening to hip hop and being like, that's the same sound as this drum machine, that's this, and starting to make those connections. And then I started playing my trumpet through a fan, because it was like this effect, this weird chorus vibrato effect. And I was like, oh, a trumpet can sound a little bit different. And then I, in college, started to experiment with like effects through the trumpet and delay and wah pedal and reverb and stuff. And then I was just off on that sort of world of like an interesting sound. I mean, I think that's kind of the basis of a lot of my music. I like to think it is like making really beautiful sounds that might sound a little bit off.
Yeah.
And that's just not crazy off, but just a little bit. And then just like diving into that world of like soundscape and you know, like the sounds of the synth and the bass and the drums and the samples and whatever are extremely important to me. And I think that's the same for every artist, but like I spend a lot of time on that sort of piece.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's kind of the direction that I'm going with my own music.
Yeah, that's so cool. I feel like I think maybe what like I find so enticing, or like my ear I think really likes the sound of the things that you make, but I think, you know, I like will amateur, you know, work in, I don't know, I try to add synth to my music because I really am like, my brain wants that sound a lot. But it. Like I think that one of the hardest sounds to achieve and make good is synth horns.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's how I wrote, you know, I wrote that last song, like with, like I think I started with horns. I can't remember, but I, you know, I wrote everything on like a little MIDI keyboard, and like awesome. There's like such a big difference. And it was funny, I was reflecting on this last week. You played with Matt LaRocca, who's like such a skilled violinist. And I was thinking like, oh my gosh, this sounds so good, because so often I think like anytime you're like, you know, like synth music or like DJing, anything like that, I think that like both strings and horns are actually like utilized a lot, but I think that those are very challenging to replicate in the same way. Like there's something that's so pulling to the sound of like a live trumpet, or pulling to the sound of a violin or strings. And I think it's so cool that you can mix something that is like so natural, like the violin, it's so soft and like I don't even know how to properly describe it, I guess, but there's something that's like innately natural about a violin, and like smushing that together so well with that like augmented synth music, I think produces this like incredibly unique sound. It's really cool. Yeah,
that's, like I said before, that's kind of my goal, is this like this human robot sort of combination, is like being able to mesh the live sampling or the live performance with the electronic piece has always been something I've been working with and trying to figure out as much as I can. I mean, it's like the same thing of like having a trumpet run through a digital delay or something like that. It's like you have both of the sounds in one, and I mean, I love the sound. I used to hate the sound of the fake synth trumpets, and now I've gone like full circle back to be like, oh yeah, this is
now
best.
You're like recording live trumpet and then replacing it with your little MIDI. I mean, it is cool. Like, again, not to say like, I mean, some of, I know, like so much of pop music has that sound to it, and there's something to be said about it. You know, it's like John Bellion, like we love that sound. You know, like that's pop music right now. Like that's so cool.
But anytime any of those people like John Bellion, anytime they perform live, they have a full horn section.
I know, so cool.
So you can't, I mean, you can still do the synth stuff on there,
but the live, like there's something about live. So much better. I recall I saw Panic at the Disco, in like the 2000, like at their peak, I think. They like played with Weezer. Like what an insane concert!
Awesome
Panic at the Disco and Weezer. I like saw them in some random place in New Hampshire. Like what are we doing here? I don't know. But I recall Panic at the Disco had a full.
Oh yeah.
First of all, Brendan Urie, I think that's his name,
Yeah.
plays every single instrument. He played the drums.
Oh, wow,
he played.
really?
Yeah, he played everything. He's a great performer. But they had a full. Like a 5-piece horn
awesome.
set, and I was like, "This is how you play live music.
Yeah.
Like, it makes a difference for sure."
I mean, for like growing up, I always remembered like the band Cake was one of my favorite bands. Cake was like, oh, you can be a trumpet player and be in a band and not be just the for hire guy that comes in. So that was like one of those things. I was like, oh wait, and then I'm like, oh, all of these jazz groups and all this stuff. It's like there's a So it was like Cake made it seem like it was normal, but then I always noticed when a band that I like was on SNL or was I would go see them live, they'd be like, there's a full horn section here. This is incredible. So it's like every band that would want their music to get upped a little bit would like bring in the full horns. And I mean, even like one of my favorite albums of all time, Rock of Ages by the band, is like one of the first times they ever played with horns. And it's like unbelievable, just completely changes their
exciting
music.
like what an exciting instrument. I want to talk, you touched on it a little bit, and I was like, I wanted to like put a pin in it so that we could come back to it, and this is sort of relevant to the conversation. I was thinking like modern day hip hop actually utilizes horns so much, which is really cool. I was just talking with my brother about J. Cole, and we both didn't know this, but J. Cole produces like a lot of his own music, which is really cool. And we were talking about some like really cool horns that are in J. Cole's music. And you touched on it, but like you do have sort of like a, like maybe I'd say like a hip hop influence on some of your music a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about that? I can't recall exactly like how you framed it earlier in the conversation.
I mean, I think it's like all of the, at least musicians that I love and people that I know that write and record are just super highly influenced by the music that they grew up with. And I think especially for me, this is my theory, the music that you were listening to when you first got your license is like the most important music that will follow you like the whole rest of your life.
Oh, it's so
it's
true.
like those records that I had, like D'Angelo Voodoo and Dre 2001 and like all of that sort of hip hop stuff that I loved growing up listening to. Also, like that's when I got my license, and then also that's when I got like my first drum machine. So it was like all tying in together. And like the hip hop influences, like I grew up listening to it. I still listen to it, hip hop, all the time. I absolutely love it. Love the production. Love just the sort of like trance-ness to it. I mean, it's like hip hop and like house music is very close.
Yeah, they're like one step away. Like, I mean, and I'm like asking about hip hop influence, but like, you know, any like, I mean, jazz is what influenced hip hop is what influenced, you know what I mean? Like we could go back in time. I mean, to the beginning of like trumpet sounds in America and that like tracks to hip hop today, I guess. But
totally. But yeah, that sort of production element and just like just the groove and the simplicity of it. And so I really deeply influenced by hip hop production and still am to this point, and absolutely get more fired up for new hip hop records than any. I feel like it's been so cool, like women in hip hop is having like this incredible moment. Like I feel like for the first time, like since the late 90s, early 2000s, they're having like this amazing renaissance. I'm like so into it, and like there's just so many new like just like women hip hop artists that I've been listening to, jamming to, and I feel like has like the musical aspect to it, like technically is like so on par and so sick. I'm like, oh, this is like it's so cool to watch right now. But it's funny that you bring up the like what you listened to when you first got your license or something. Totally. So the like, I mean, my show is like, you know, gone farther away from this, but I started my show like the premise of my show is basically like nostalgia music. So it's like music that you listen to and it like takes you somewhere. And like that. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, my favorite. Yes. And my favorite too. I'm like, it's like branded as like sad girl music for me, you know, but that's what I, you know, when I was 16, I was like listening to Daughter like, that's cool. Or like really upsetting music. But, it's fine. I was reflecting, because I like, well, that's not true, but Eminem was like the Recovery album by Eminem has to be like to the day like has to be my most listened to album of all time, only because from ages like
14 to 17.
It's just on repeat.
And like, I think it might have been one of the first albums that I like was obsessed with. Like I knew could order the songs for you now, I'm sure. Yep. Which is like so silly, so silly, but like just, and moved me in such this particular way, like made me want to work out, made me want to go for a run, like
made me want to fight someone.
And it's so funny because I took such a long obviously, I mean, thank God, I would hope that I sort of expanded my music taste off of the recovery. I mean, I love Eminem, but no shade to Eminem at all. But it's so funny because I don't know what like came over me, but I think I like listened to one of the songs the other day, and for the last month, it's like the only thing I've been listening to in the gym, and I'm like, oh my God, this like transports me back in like such a way that is like unbelievable. And I think like to the day, like it's so funny to be like, oh yeah, like Eminem has like 100% like so influenced on like my music, and like I think what I am like attuned to and what I like to hear and listen to and like and pull towards. It's so interesting. Like could have nothing to do with, Eminem is not in line with the type of music that I listen to today, but I'm like, it's in there with like my Bon Iver, my other, you know what I mean? It's like, it's the same. Yeah. It feels the same than when I'm listening to like For Emma by Bon Iver or something like that. Right. It like really brings me the same, like I'm 16-year-old, so, and my CD that I have that's ordered that I can still remember. Like, I don't know if this happens to you, but I would make myself mix CDs and put them in my car, and to the day when I hear a song that was on a mix CD, I can hear the next song after on a CD. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I remember hearing some of the songs that I would put on mix CDs or like stuff like that, and then remember maybe not the next one, but some around that era that I would be listening to.
Okay, I want to switch gears because you have new music.
I do.
Coming out.
Yeah.
You have a lot of new music coming out.
I have a lot of new music coming out.
To date, this is going to come out tomorrow, so Thursday afternoon. So Make It Sing is out already.
Yeah, there's a first single called Make It Sing.
And your next single will be coming out this next
on Friday.
Day.
Yeah.
This is the before times, but in the current times, it'll be coming out tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
Talk to me about Make It Sing. Talk to me about the new tune that's coming out.
Yep. So the first track of that I put out of this new record, the new record's called Music Like Dirt. Cool. It's an instrumental album, so it's the first real instrumental album I've ever put out.
Awesome.
I've put out a couple records as Jaffe Ryder, which is a band that I play in, that we do all instrumental music and we write and record together. But I record all the time, and I have all of these like scraps and little bits and ideas and things like that I've kept over the last 10 or so years, and I just wanted to kind of wrap them up and put them out as one sort of thing. And I also it coincided with this Wallflower gig that I do every Wednesday, and that's me doing instrumental, sort of improvised, sample-based stuff. And I wanted to have some sort of like live version or a record version of that sort of thing that I'm doing live.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a combination of me going through my old tracks that I've pulled up and found some stuff. Also, I recorded a bunch of those live shows on cassette tape.
Oh.
So in between a lot of the songs, there's these little interludes of little things, people talking, people hanging out, or cassette versions of us jamming and hanging out. So it's kind of like this. The record itself is 20 songs. It's only about 35 minutes, but it's all kind of mixed in together.
Yeah. Designed to be maybe listened to sort of in a sitting.
As one.
Yeah. So cool. It doesn't happen enough anymore. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's cool. And actually making that, like to do that was, it's just counterintuitive to all the records that I've made before, where it's like fade out, take a little time, 3 seconds, come out. And now I'm like having things kind of meld in together and but it's really cool. It came out really well. And the single itself, Make It Sing, which I put out, is the second track on the album, and it's just like some trumpet. There's I did a lot of this recording with my friend Jay Thyme, who's a drummer in town, and him and I worked together on it a lot. So he's on live drums throughout the whole record. Nice. And then there's, like I was talking about before, there's this combination of program stuff and live instrumentation. There's a lot of live bass playing. There's some other artists, Tom Pero, who's a great guitar player.
Yeah, love Tom Pero.
He's playing,
so talented.
Yeah, so I've played on a couple of his songs, and now he's played on one of the tracks with me. And then Mark Daly, who goes by plays with Medela, he's on a couple of them too. So I brought in some of my like favorite musicians and to just give it a little bit of a different vibe, and it's really cool. It's like I describe it as like it's like one part like sonic exploration, one part like therapy, and then one part just like absolute fever dream. Like what's going on here?
Love.
Because like I as we were talking last Wednesday, I'm just obsessed with writing, recording, playing. Yeah. It's one of those things where if you think about your life, there may be things that come and go that you like care about or that you put a lot of time towards. And this is one thing that it's like, as I get older, it needs more and more time.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, I love it. And you put in so much time into it that you start feeling more confident, and music starts to find like an appropriate spot in your life. Where when I was younger, I cared about so many things that I wanted to attain, and I was like, I got to do this, and I got to do this, and I wanted to tell people about all the things that I was going to do, and what I was. And the more that I've spent time like actually getting better at it, the less I talk about it, and the more that I'm able to like do it and like actually, write cool songs and record with people and gig and do all those things that I always wanted to do that I was talking about. So like it's just like it's the rocks like rolling down the hill now, and it sounds awesome. I'm super confident in it, and I did all of the recording, all of the mixing. Wow. I did a little bit of the mastering, a little bit of mixing with my friend Ben Collette at the Tank Studio, which is incredible. Ben's like the best. What a great studio too. But yeah, just like my ability to record, write, kind of compose too is feeling pretty strong at this point in time.
In the pocket.
Yeah, for real.
So to say.
And it's cool when you're there and you can kind of feel it. So so I'm trying to, it's just awesome. It's like it's weird too. It's like funny how cyclical it is. Like there was a time like this album was going to be released like 2 months ago, and right before that I had it all submitted and everything, and I was ready to go, and it, like a week before the single was supposed to come out, I was like, I hate all these songs. It's garbage. So even though I'm like talking like, oh yeah, this is great, like it still comes and goes a little bit, but like I had to take a little break from them, and then I came back and was able to kind of fall back in love with them and tweak them a little bit sonically, and then just trust that like it's good, it's okay, you can release it, it's good to go.
What a gift time is.
Yeah.
Don't
so rush.
Often.
Don't rush.
Yeah. So I mean, also when you listen to the same thing over and over again, that happens to me so bad. Whenever I get that feeling, which every song I ever write, at some point in time, I'm like, we should throw this in the garbage.
This is
garbage. Like this was never good anyway,
this
and
is
then
terrible.
You need
absolutely terrible.
Yeah. Or for me, this is something that Chris and I have to work on together quite a bit, because I sometimes will get so into a certain sound, and then anytime it is changed, I'm like, it's terrible, awful. We can't do like we got and
but that's
I have
a good
to take,
thing though too.
Yeah.
It's like you're like, I want this is the driving force. This is the foundation. This is the spine of the song.
Sure.
Sometimes a synth sound or a sample or something is like so like it just, that's where the song lives.
Yeah, 100%.
And as much as like I am a fan of muting and taking out and throwing different things in and trying stuff out, a lot of times I'll always circle back to that first sound that's there, that even I might have hated it at some point, but I'm like, actually that's it.
It's like the first take.
Yeah.
Always. I'm like always the first take. I'm a first take person for sure, I think, because like I cannot, especially with my voice, like if I am trying to hit something, it's not going to be as good as if I'm like shaking it out and just doing it live or whatever. I really like have learned that so much about myself, which is like, just like it's probably the first take.
It's always
probably when you're not thinking about it and you can just like say I'm gonna just try it or whatever. But
always like it's almost like there's the Tenacious D, like always record, always record. But it's like, even if you
ABR, that's the rule in the studio
if
too.
You can record like even before you want to record, because even sometimes even the like when you're just humming the idea, like that sort of stuff, when it's that raw sort of like when you're still learning it. Like so I have this record that I'm in the process of releasing, and then I'm also working on finishing another one that's more vocally based and stuff like that. And that one, I brought a bunch of different people to the studio, and it was like, I'm only going to let you hear this song, and we're going to record on it.
Yes.
So having people record instrumental guitar, drums, bass, and they'd never heard the song before.
So cool.
And then they can just play, like, what's your idea? Like that first, what's your musical inkling to make this choice? It's always the first takes on those sessions are like
always
all over the record.
And sort of like you said, it's like the less you're thinking about, oh, I'm gonna sound this that way, or I want to be this thing, so let me try that. Like the more that you can just be really, probably the better sound it's gonna have.
Yeah, and I think that's also like that's who you are as a musician.
Yeah.
So like when you're forced to play, when you're forced to like play something that you don't know, like that's your sound, that's your approach, that's everything. It kind of like encapsulates like who you are. Whereas like if you have time to rehearse and you got the charts and you got everything down, it's kind of a cleaner version of you.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're asked to record, or someone's like, hey, how about this, it's just like it's you. It's much more raw, which I think is like the imperfection is what leads to like some of my favorite music that I've written, but also that I've listened to.
100%. That's like, I mean, right, the beauty of like live music, right? That's why we love it so much, is because there isn't any, it is always your just first inkling, whatever you're feeling.
Right.
It's funny you were bringing up like, oh, always be recording or record everything, or the humming thing.
Yeah.
I was thinking when you said like, oh, so many of these were like ideas from such a long period of time that you're kind of like releasing, like, does that actually feel amazing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's like you get over the part where it's like you're worried about if they are still you, because some of them are. There's a couple on this that are like 8 years old or something like that, maybe a little bit longer than that, and there's some that were recorded 2 months ago. So it's like you get over it is you. You were there. Just because you know a little bit more about compression now, or you use a different board or whatever, it doesn't mean that the song's not good before.
100%.
And I had to like wrap my head around that, to be like, because this record is like really, there's a lot of sonic stuff happening, there's a lot of weird things in the background, and like the weird cassette stuff and all this sort of stuff, so it sounds like a mixture of all these different people that were like mixing this at a certain time. And it's because it was a different version of me over like the last 8 years. And I didn't want to like scrap some of the mixes or the ideas that I had before. I wanted to keep some of that stuff that was older and maybe imperfect or whatever.
It's part of it.
It's part of it. And it leads to, I think, obviously I would say this, but it leads to listenability for this album. 'Cause you're like, wow, this is totally different sonically, or this is like a different sounding drum kit or a different synth or whatever. It leads to this sort of ebb and flow of the record itself, which I think is what makes it cool. Yeah,
100%. That's super awesome. I was sort of had brought that up, and I was thinking when you were saying like, oh yes, this is like from such a long period of time, like I always say like, if I die suddenly, like I need a trusted person to go in and delete all of my voice memos.
Yeah, we talked about this.
Because
there's got to be some gold in there, though. I'm telling you.
That's so funny. We talked about this. Well, like that's what I was thinking of when you were saying like, oh, it's from such a long period of time. Which I know, like I have, I mean, probably like hundreds of songs that I've just like hummed to myself or whatever it is. And I would love, like, I wish, kind of like you were saying, like you just have found more and more time to do it. I think something I struggle with so much is like, I mean, music is what I like the most. I do, like, a lot of my time is music, I guess, or surrounding around music. But I always wish, like, I always think, like, I want to pull, like, a Justin Vernon. Like, if I just had a month in a cabin or something, like, I think about it all of the time. And I really struggle at my point, like, at this point in my life, to be able to prioritize the creative. You know, once I have something, once it's there, once there's lyrics, like the production is like a little bit more like, well, you need to check these boxes sort of, or like with the show, like it's creating for sure, but it's like so much more structured. And like for me, I'm like, oh God, like I don't know what is in there, but I know I have things, and it just must feel good to like, you have taken all of these ideas that you do have, and now they're sort of they get to like live, you know, or they get to grow in this new way. It must be really cool. And
yeah, I mean, I think, yes, I agree. And I do think this idea of, if I can just only go to the woods for a week and to write an album, then I'll be happy.
Yeah.
And like, I've been a pretty busy guy, and I will continue to. I have 2 little kids. I'm a teacher. I'm gigging and doing all that stuff. But what I've done is, over the last maybe 5 or so years, is I've figured out a way to be able to be okay with that, and to be able to harness the creativity as best as I can. And my only piece of advice is like, you're not going to be super creative every day. It's just not going to happen. If maybe some people are, but I don't know. So maybe I have 1 or 2 days a week that I'm going to be super creative. And ideally those will kind of tie in with time that I have. And there's always this sort of perfect weekend that's just never really going to happen.
Yeah.
So the way that I do it is I do something fun and creative every single day, and I have to force myself to do it. And even if I don't want to, something that's going to set myself up for when I have that creative energy, that I can just dive in and do it. So if that's like, getting a session set up or cleaned up, or doing a little bit of editing, or adding some drums into a sample, or like figuring it out, or sending a bunch of emails and reaching out to a bunch of people and doing sort of like the back end work. Because as a solo artist, we have to do, we have to write the music, play the music, record it, do the social media, do all the finances, promotion, everything. So maybe do a little bit of time towards that. And then another day scheduling some gigs or doing stuff like that. So I figured out like, I want to play, I want to just turn knobs and write music and do that stuff all the time, but it's just life gets in the way.
Yeah.
So I do as much as I can every day. So when I do have that time, I can just get in and I'm just going for it.
Yeah.
Everything's set up in my studio perfectly, where I can either play for 1 minute or a whole day, and it's fine. I can hop in, play a little bit, do that. And that's been the most successful thing for me, and the reason why I have released this record, why I have another one set up, and I'm kind of like doing this almost like a year to 18 month release thing, because the little time that I have, I'm like utilizing it as best as I can.
Yeah, that's great advice.
And it's like, it's not as fun or sexy to like send out emails one day, but that is accessing this creative part of your brain that 100%. You're doing like this sort of stuff is too.
Yeah.
And then when you do have that time, you're set up, ready to go. The session's ready. It's clean. Your guitar's all tuned. Everything's perfect. And you can just like dive in and do it. And then also book yourself a weekend in Airbnb in Pulteney or wherever for a weekend in December and do it. And that's what I need. I need like a weekend or 2 or 3 weekends a year where all I'm doing is just writing music, recording, turning some knobs. It might be completely garbage. There's nothing better that I love to record something and then just delete it and just be like, well, none of that was good. Let's move on to something else. And like, that's the way you clear it out. You like get going on it. So yeah, book a weekend and Justin Vernon it. And,
I mean, do it one day. No, it's really, really great advice, especially, I mean, it's just so impressive to put out any music is impressive, but I think the rate at which you've been doing it is really cool.
Yeah.
Will you quickly talk about the song that's coming out on Friday, and maybe like I want to hear kind of what's next? It sounds like you already have another album that's sort of underway.
Yeah.
Is there places that you aren't right now that you're looking to go to, like any new areas you want to fill up, or are you totally sitting in your pocket and like what is sort of going on for you next?
Yeah, so the second single is called The Beach. It's one of the oldest songs on the record.
Cool.
And this is like when we're talking about like a different version of you recorded something, those voice notes or whatever, but it's still you, it's still there. And this is one of those that's kind of like was the seed for this sort of instrumental stuff. And it's just really simple, but it was recorded, the drums were recorded on one mic, so you can hear the drummer Jay breathing, which I kind of like, and it's sampled, so he's like breathing at the same time, and it's kind of like a percussive element to it. Live bass again, kind of like a dance hall-ish sort of Afrobeat track, and it's really raw, and that's kind of like what I love about it. So that's on Friday, and then there's a new record. There'll probably be another single out from this record that's coming out in the future, probably in December or January, and this one is going to be more of like a vocal-based one with a lot of different artists in the community that are going to be singing on them. Awesome. So I did some singing on some of the earlier records, and I've officially retired from that because I have so many incredibly talented friends that are going to sing some lead stuff. Yeah. And it's been really cool with this too, because I've created all the instrumentals, and then I've started to share them with people and ask them to just write to them and see what they've come up with, kind of like what I did for your record. And I've never done that before. I've usually been like full on, like it's got to be these perfectly sung like this and this, like, and now I'm starting to let go of it, and it's incredible to see what other musical decisions these people would make. And it's I'm starting to get some of them back, and it's just unbelievable. Yeah. It's like they send me something, I'm like, all right, this is done. It's done. It's officially done.
That's so like, there's such a beauty in music collaboration, and I think like both in the like when you give someone music to play on and when you receive music to play, like it is such a like I think that the times where I have been able to like collaborate with someone, like it's their thing and I get to help them with it, like it's such great, I guess, like affirmation in so many ways, which is really cool. Like when you don't have stake in the song, like that can be such a fun opportunity, like like we're talking about, like what a great exercise to do, and also like it's so nice to have someone trust you to do your thing, you know, like I think that that's like so special and so cool, and like probably always, like we're talking about, like always when there's no pressure on it, like that's when you make sweet music. And I think that music collaboration is like such a special thing in that way, and how lucky are we, like Burlington is such a great place to do that. It's really cool. I think it's pretty unique in that way of like so deeply community oriented. People
are down, and like cool. What I always tell my kids or my students, I'm like, just ask people.
100%.
Just like in general in life, as a good piece of advice, to be like, just ask your neighbor if you can mow his lawn for $20. Like do those things. Like ask someone if you can collaborate with them, or if they want to play with you, or they want to listen to a song or something like that. Like always, I agree. The Burlington music scene's wonderful. Yeah, and it's been fun to be a part of. I've been gigging in Burlington since I was like 19 or something like that.
That's crazy.
18. Yeah,
that's really cool.
I'm old now, but
I was gonna ask you where people can find you, but I have another question.
Yeah, hit me.
How has the Burlington music scene changed?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's been pretty consistently similar.
It hasn't changed. Changed a bit.
There's been a couple of us that have been playing for the last 20 years, and there's been some people that have come and gone. I mean, it's been the same. I would say over the last 5 years, there's been a large influx of really good younger musicians, and prior to that, it wasn't the case. Yeah. There's been some really incredible. There are still like incredible artists that have come out in the last couple of years that I'm really inspired by, that play different music than I would ever, like Greg Freeman and Lily Seabird and that whole crew just like unbelievable music that 100%. Is like, I'm like, man, I don't play guitar, I don't play bass, I'm playing synth and trumpet. I'm like, there's no way I can fit in that lane, but I love that style, like post rock or whatever it is. I don't even know how to describe it, but it's like, it's just so familiar. And but also brand new at the same time, which is ultimately the goal. It's like you want to be able to find your little niche in, and I feel like those guys are finding it.
Yeah, 100%. And really they have the audience so much so, which is really
and they're
cool.
Just like such great performers.
Yeah.
Too.
Yes, 100%.
So yeah, I don't know. I think other than that, the newer crew that's come in, I mean, there was a lot of jam stuff early on, and like we all survived that, or some of us did.
Not all of us. Not all of
us. But now it seems like more like song specific and performance specific.
Totally.
Great jazz musicians and like there's enough places to play. Like everyone's making some money, which is good, and people are getting good gigs. So I don't know. There's no like I don't know. Maybe there's. I'm an old guy in the scene here, so I don't know. Maybe there's some beef, but it doesn't seem like there's beef. There might have been some beef back in the day.
I don't think there's beef.
Yeah,
but I'm probably not the right person to ask.
No one's beefing.
It does not appear that there's beefing going on.
One thing before we go too, you had mentioned this. Are you okay? This idea of this nostalgic music, and I'd be remiss if I don't offer some of those records, the most nostalgic ones for me. When you thought about that, I just haven't been able to stop thinking about it. It's like these 3 albums.
Yeah, hit me.
Tom Petty, Wildflowers.
Obviously.
Just like brings me back to like being 10, like listening to this. Any of the old Ben Folds stuff, like Ben Folds 5 or like the first Ben Folds records. Those were incredible. Bonnie Raitt, Nick of Time. I don't know if you know that album.
Okay, I don't know the album. But
oh man, that's just one of my all-time favorite records. And that's one of those records that was like, my parents were listening to that when I was really young.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said for those albums that like
even younger, like pre actually 16. Like
I was like 4 or something like that. And then like all like Bruce Hornsby and The Rain.
Yes.
That's like those sort of those artists, those records. That's like the most nostalgic stuff for me because there's pictures of me like as a 4-year-old or 5-year-old with that record in the background, or crazy. Like being in the car and having them put in the Graceland tape or something like that. So like I'm a huge fan of that sort of nostalgic music, and I go to it like if I tell my wife if I'm listening to Tom Petty, Wildflowers, just check on me. Yeah. Just make sure I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
Because I'm either
get you like a glass of water
I'm either
or something.
like doing really great, or I'm like crying in the kitchen. So it's like one or the other.
Yeah. That's so awesome. Also, this is the first interview I haven't done this, and I always ask my guests every single time before I begin the interview if you're okay.
Oh,
and I just 100% skipped it. We were too busy making sure that this thing was recording, which I mean, hopefully
let's hope it is.
Are you okay? Are you doing okay?
What an absolutely loaded question.
It's always the first one so that you can kind of get it, off your chest.
And everyone just goes, yeah, sure, or yes. Or do people...
Sometimes people will like... because sometimes I want to... If I don't know the person at all, sometimes being like, are you okay is a little harsh to some. I'll say this. Mm-hmm. Are you okay? How are you doing? In that exact 1, 2.
Yeah, okay, I see.
But if I know the person, I'll say like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Which I'm asking you now.
I mean, I think that it's... I find it... extremely difficult to answer. Okay. Because it's so.
This is good feedback for me.
Well, I mean, I think that could be the entire interview.
Yeah.
Is like
sometimes
it's
it
like
is
therapy. It's like are you okay? Like what is okay? What is good? So I would say I am and have been working to like right up to my capacity, my mental capacity. Yeah. And sometimes I'm like a little bit over it, sometimes a little bit below it, but I'm right up to it. Yeah. So in order to live in that world, you have to be able to know yourself really well and be able to kind of manage that line. Mm-hmm. So I am at this point okay, but I am very close.
That's how I feel.
I'm very close, and it's not like I'm gonna fly off the handle, but if anything, I'm gonna like need to like take a day off and maybe take a nap and like chill because I'm pushing it, but I'm feeling pretty good. Okay. So I would say yes, I am okay.
Okay, that's great. I relate to that on an unreal level. We were talking before the interview about just like that's how I feel about being in grad school and also work and also this and also music stuff. It's like I'm good, but like one misstep and I don't know. I'm gonna have a different answer to that question.
I know. Yeah, that's true.
Where can people find you, Will?
So you can follow Willverine Music on Instagram. Check out my stuff on Spotify, Willverine. And if you're in Burlington, I'm playing every Wednesday from 7 to 9 at the Wallflower Collective.
Cool. And
then I play with also Aquamosa and Freeway Clyde, Jaffe Ryder, a whole bunch of other different bands.
Yeah, around town. And people can find that on your Instagram.
Yeah, I usually keep Instagram pretty well updated.
And we're running out of time here.
Yep.
Make It Sing is out right now.
Yep.
We're going to play that tune after this is
Rad.
what people will
Thank you.
hear. And then listen to...
The Beach is on Friday, and then the whole record will be on Friday the 20th.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for actually being officially on Are You Okay? And so good to meet you in person for real after like a long time of us not meeting.
And I'll come back when the next record's out.
Please do.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. That's a wrap.